Hello, Dubs. As I said previously, I'm back from my friend's wedding, but don't let that fool you. I'm quite literally about to jet off again for a week and a bit in the States. We're going to see my husband's family. So if you're viewing this now, it's because I have actually managed to get my together and film a few short and sharp as well as some longer form vids and got them preloaded so that you can stay entertained while I travel and get myself situated. I do want to do some filming while I'm in the States. Maybe I'll do another kind of travel vlog thing because that was fun. I enjoyed my whistle stop tour through Latvia. So I'm gonna try and do something similar for this trip, but I'm also gonna see if I can just stick to my schedule, which is what I'm trying to do here. This is a short and sharp one. This is a short and sharp one because the World Cup is now over. And I have quite literally tried to film this video multiple times now because I want to talk about something very specific in relation to the World Cup. I'm not a sports person. I can appreciate sports. I tend to like collegiate sports rather than professional. You know, I still root for my university team in spite of more complicated feelings about my relationship with that institution. I have never been a professional sports kind of girl, but I enjoy spectacle. So when the Olympics come around, I enjoy watching it. When things like the World Cup happens, Jeff and I, meet up with friends and we go to the pub or we go to a friend's house to watch some of the matches if we feel like a connection to the teams. And as always, I love watching the spectacle of people enjoying things and the conversations that arise around it and the kind of media that comes out of it because I'm a nerd. I assume you are too. That's why you're here. The thing that I want to talk about today is a very specific narrative arc and phenomenon of narrative that has sprung up around the 2026 Men's World Cup as seen through the lens of social media. And for me, specifically through the lens that I bring to the table of an American witnessing America from the outside, because 'twas fascinating. There has been an entire hero's journey of a narrative for me about the American brand. Because, just for a bit of context for me, when the current administration of the government of the United States started its latest violent crackdowns on immigration that, have now in multiple cases resulted in the extrajudicial killing of citizens and legal residents and immigrants alike. This is not a transparent administration. We only know what breaks through that the news media is able to report to us. But what we do know should have more people in America absolutely incensed than there is. That's a different rant. I don't want to get off topic. But again, watching the latest versions of the crackdowns, the escalations of violence, the escalation of hostilities, of how America speaks to and about the rest of the world, including its allies, I was very much of the view that, if some of the nations choose to boycott or not participate in the World Cup, I would find that a wholly justifiable choice. If you didn't feel that your team or your crew was safe traveling to the States, which later there were high-profile incidents of, people being stopped by immigration or detained when they should not have been, so a valid fear with the benefit of hindsight. If you felt a moral obligation to defend, rights of movement and the protections of the law. If you looked at what was going on with the power and might of the American government and went, yeah, I'm not going to participate, I would have cheered that decision and I would have supported it. And to be clear, I still would have done so. And I think a lot of the actions of the administrative state of America have borne that out. But something happened very early in the World Cup that made me go, as much as I like to be right, it's important to sometimes remember when you're wrong. And there was an organic, and I think that's important here, there was an organic upswell of really positive media and news stories, especially on social media. Now, as always, you have to be wary, you have to be critical, you have to know how social media is manipulated by all kinds of actors to promote or demote stories that they do and don't want to see. But a few things were happening all simultaneously. Number one, the Knicks won the NBA series for the first time in decades, and there was an organic burst of joy in New York City specifically that spilled out on social media. Because New York is the city that it is, because of the social prominence it has, because of the population density, there was a party, and people enjoyed witnessing and participating in that party, including online. And simultaneous to that, on a more global scale and sense, the World Cup was happening, and there were organic, authentic instances of the best that the sporting world brings, of cross-cultural pollination and engagement and genuine examples of goodwill that were amazing. They were amazing. Famously, I think it was a town in Kentucky, maybe Tennessee, welcomed the Algerian team with parades and open arms, and people were posting stories about how much fun they were having in the community. And, you know, Algerian fans that traveled to the community seemed to broadly be welcomed and celebrated, and everyone was just throwing themselves into probably a much needed performance of joy. It didn't stop there. The examples kept rolling in of how the Mexican fans and the Korean fans were exchanging cuisines with one another and having a great time. Oh my God, Scotland, you beauties, you absolute units. The Tartan Army descending on Boston and drinking the city dry will go down in pop culture history. The behavior of the Scottish fans and the enthusiasm with which they threw themselves into a new to them community, and critically, the way that community responded in kind. They were delighted to be delighted. And this was happening across nations, across language barriers, across cities. And for Americans, I think, like I said, it was a moment of much needed joy and celebration, because most of what's coming out of American news right now to the global lens is really, really shit, and deserves to be viewed with criticism. There was a moment where I think a lot of Americans were looking at, again, organic and authentic instances of positive community engagement, of a celebration of a mutual love of sport, or a mutual love of one's own community and the opportunity to see it celebrated by others. A very good and healthy and lovely human trait, I feel. Just, again, people being delighted with others' delight. We don't get many organic instances of that anymore. Part of the reason I love pop culture is I think at its best, it's a very, very pure example of loving something in public and loudly and finding other people who like what you like too. That is such a fun experience. So even though I'm not well versed in it in the sports world, I understand mob joy when I see it, and I like it. And so for a lot of Americans like me, who are increasingly down on, frightened about, frustrated by, and demoralized about the state of our own nation, I was among many people who went, oh, that's right. You know, we have a lot of problems, we have a lot of issues. I will be the last person to say otherwise, but also human beings can be pretty great, and that includes my people sometimes too. There was a moment where I feel like the xenophobia and the hostility to the rest of the world, which is in power at the moment in the United States, culturally as well as politically, kind of was beaten back by just people wanting to like things again. And count me among the many going, oh, I'm really glad that these people didn't actually boycott. I'm really glad that people decided to show up and to aggressively pursue joy and aggressively perform joy and aggressively make space for other people's joy. It felt like a break. It felt like a moment of of unadulterated pride and happiness, and an example of what I think healthy patriotism looks like, that we are badly, badly lacking for Americans. And there was also a moment where I feel like a lot of other communities the world over went, oh, that's right. They might be mad sometimes, but also Americans can be pretty great when they want to be, right? I was seeing, again, my view of the internet is very curated, as is yours, never forget that. But I was seeing many people going, oh, I forgot that I actually liked Americans a lot of the times. It's their government that I hate. It was great. It was so nice, and it was so necessary. And I, for one, really enjoyed being wrong about my initial knee-jerk reaction, which was boycott it, don't go. Like, nothing good will come out of it. Because here it was, good was coming out of it. But remember how I said I've been trying to film this video a few times now? Yeah. Things kept happening. I sometimes think that Donald Trump really made a monkey's paw agreement where, yes, he would get everything he ever wanted and we would be protected from the consequences of all of his actions, but that everything he would touch would turn to dust in his hands. You know, in the midst of this organic, authentic, proletariat, plebeian upswelling of goodwill towards the United States at a moment where the United States badly needed that, a moment of PR you cannot pay for and you cannot orchestrate. It has to happen organically in order for it to be authentic and appreciated and impactful. Donnie T, of course, had to step on the moment because that is his superpower. After the US had one of its matches, Donald Trump, who cannot keep his mouth shut and who cannot help but make everything about him, decided to publicly message that he had put in a call to the president of FIFA, I believe, to overturn the consequences of a red card for one of the American players. And all of this organic goodwill, all of this kind of, hey, maybe we do like Americans, or, oh, maybe America isn't all bad, came to a screeching halt. In an instant, Americans and our guests and people who were, you know, in some cases enthusiastically and in other cases maybe grudgingly, were feeling a moment of goodwill towards us, were abruptly reminded of why America is viewed with hostility at the moment, why the criticisms of us as a nation state on the world stage are as powerful and compelling as they are, that at our worst, we are a nation that throws our weight around, can call in favors, leans on people, you know, pressurizes them to do what we want. And in the age of Donald Trump, in an age of rising cronyism and oligarchy, he quite literally personifies that. He has insisted on making the nation state about him as the living symbol of the nation. And in that respect, yeah, he did the job he wanted to do, which is to get the outcome that he wanted. More and more competent sports people than me can go into great detail about FIFA's many failings and corruptions as an organization. From what I know about them, I don't like them, but I exist in a world where most of the things that I like and appreciate are controlled by people I actively hate. So I'm learning to live with the ambiguity, but I want to be clear. I was enjoying the culture of the World Cup as experienced by, created by, crafted by the fans organically on the ground, not the organization that owns it, right? But for America to step in and apparently lean on FIFA and then to proudly message, oh, hey, we're influencing this for our benefit. We want our star player to stay and play the next match instead of bearing the consequences of a red card, which, as I understand, would have been to keep him from playing in the next match. We didn't want to lose our perceived advantage. We didn't want our player taken out. So, of course, our Timu mafia boss of a president made a call to his friend and asked him to do me a favor. And the corrupt president of FIFA did so. And like I said, the goodwill died. The whole thing felt tainted. And on an instant, the social media discussion and culture and momentum shifted. it shifted, and I watched it shift in real time. And people went, oh, that's right, FIFA's corrupt. Oh, that's right, the American president is a cheap knockoff version of a gangster. Oh, that's right, the reason we don't like America right now is, and you know, for many people much longer, but go with me on this, is how they choose to use and abuse their power to put themselves or keep themselves ahead at the expense of other people. As is almost always the case in the sports world, the underdog story is so powerful and so compelling. I myself was rooting for Cabo Verde, man, and the exquisite performances that a lot of smaller teams from smaller nations who never get this kind of opportunity because of the changes that FIFA had made to the tournament for this World Cup, which I think have been demonstrated to be good for the culture of sports and sports fandom. Like, look how many people got so much more invested. I, a woman who doesn't like professional sports, was cheering on the goaltender of Cabo Verde because of a masterful and almost archetypically heroic performance. Like, that's what you want. Like, if all you care about is the money, you want people to love things purely because capitalism, baby. And then the glossy veneer, or, you know, if you're cynical like I can be, or the lovely PR lie, again, if you're cynical, or if you're more wholesome, the authentic opportunities and moments of joy were kind of just ruthlessly jerked away. And what was left was kind of the naked grift of it all and the naked unfairness of it all. The US went on to lose its next match, and I'm glad to say, quite rightly, I think what I witnessed again in my self-curated algorithmic corner of the internet was not hostility towards the player in question, because he's a young man who does not choose, you know, how he is deployed in his sport. I don't think he could choose whether or not he wanted to even not play in the next match. If his coach put him in, he had to play. And again, the coach of the opposing team for the next match spoke very highly of him and how that player, you know, kind of went forward to just acknowledge the situation, and the opposing team's coach was very complimentary of him and his sportsmanship. So I was glad to see that a lot of vitriol, which the internet likes to direct on individuals because we love a scapegoat, did not go towards that player because he did not create the circumstances he was in. It was quite rightly put towards FIFA and towards, you know, the improper use of political power and influence on a sporting event. The blame went where it was supposed to. But the mood online about the World Cup that I witnessed via the lens of social media shifted after that. The big fans and the passionate fans are, of course, you know, cheering on their teams. You know, the diehards are still showing up, and people still watch the matches, of course. But you cannot recreate authentic goodwill. It has to bubble up. It's a very, very small d democratic thing. It cannot be imposed from the top down. It must be built from the ground up. And the vibes around the coverage changed after that. And even now, I'm recording this the day after the final match, I saw a lot of criticism on the Americanization of the final match with a halftime show, like the American football Super Bowl games do. That the entertainment was weird because that's not what most international fans are used to or even want to see in their football matches. Like, the attempts to make it American were suddenly viewed with resentment and irritation and eye rolls. Whereas I wonder if the moment hadn't been stepped on, would there have been more tolerance for the Americanization? Or would people have gone, yeah, this is very American of them to do, but look what a good time we've had. So you know what? We'll give them this. I wonder if people would be as critical of the final match had Trump not performed the worst of American tendencies. I don't know, but I suspect not. And I think the reason I'm so fascinated with all of this is because I'm always fascinated in the idea of propaganda and PR. the stories that we craft to tell and the reasons that we try to tell the stories we do, the outcomes we want those stories to achieve from us. And now, looking back on the whole of the World Cup and the entire arc of the social media narrative around the American experience, or America as experienced by non-Americans for this particular event, it's a much more complicated and nuanced story, isn't it? There were a lot of different narratives clashing. There was the narrative of what Americans are increasingly told by our government about the rest of the world. Comments about shithole countries, direct quote from the President of the United States. There are comments about we should own them, Greenland. Canada should be the 51st state, or just statements about how we should view the rest of the world, specifically inferior to us. There's also the narratives that other people outside the United States are forming about America, the view from the outside in, which is, oh, weird things are happening there. What is happening there? Oh, maybe we should go our own way. Oh, maybe we should just avoid that continent entirely. America is viewing the rest of the world increasingly in overtly, because I'm not going to argue that this is new, but I'm going to argue that the tone and the tenor is different in the last decade under Trump than it has been. That America views the rest of the world derogatory. USA, we're number one, and all of that irritating bullshit and nonsense. And the rest of the world has kind of been going, yeah, okay, kids, as we were saying, viewing us quite rightly as toddlers or teenagers throwing a tantrum. So there's how we think about the rest of the world and how the rest of the world thinks about us, but also, and the thing that I think the social media narrative is most instructive on right now, is how Americans view themselves. Americans, historically, culturally, as I've ranted about before in a few different videos now, had the deep and abiding need to see themselves as the good guys. This is a very human trait. Everyone wants to be the hero of their own story, and that's as true of any nation state as it is of an individual. Americans just have a very unique flavor of this. I think it's because of the combination of the Hollywood industry, because of the kinds of technologies that we've done and created over the years, of course, of our political position, geopolitical, social, and economic influence, particularly post-World War II, all the stuff that I've talked about. Americans have crafted a narrative for others, but most importantly for ourselves, that we are the good guys. And we don't like it when that narrative is challenged. And so, with the benefit now, again, of hindsight of the entirety of the tournament, I look back on the initial burst of joy and enthusiasm that I myself participated in, of going, oh, look, see, we're not that bad. And I have to not take away from that or think that it was wrong, but I have to add yet again another layer of complexity for that, because I want so badly to be a good guy. I want so badly for my nation state to be good, for the people with whom I share citizenship to be kind and virtuous and welcoming. I want that to be true so badly. And so when examples of that bubbled to the surface, I was just as eager as anyone to seize hold of them and to celebrate them, because again, it supports a narrative that I badly want to be the case. Can it be the case? Yes. But truths are never standalone. This whole thing has been a most fascinating case study in how PR and propaganda, and frankly pure joy, works in narrative construction, in confronting other people's narratives and confronting our self-narratives, and ultimately at the end of it, a reminder that every story that we tell ourselves, that we tell others, that others tell about us is only one version of the truth. You have to get multiple lenses. You have to have your own perspectives challenged. You have to allow the criticism and the joy to sit alongside with one another. You have to celebrate the good and you have to condemn the bad. For me, what started as a moment of being like, guys, I was wrong. I was wrong. Like, America is good, actually. At the end of it all is, once again, a much more complicated and nuanced story than that. As always, viewing my nation from across an ocean is a powerful thing, and something that I obviously takes up a lot of space in my brain and that I enjoy thinking about. But I did not expect the narrative arc that I got through the lens of something as shallow of social media about something I am not an expert on by any stretch, which is sports fandom. There were some unique lessons about propaganda and PR, and including self-propaganda and PR, that this World Cup has, I think, shone a light on. Thank you for indulging in a slightly more philosophical take on social media than I hope that you've had before. Please educate me. Tell me what your experience of the World Cup has been, especially if you're a sports fan, because I see you, I love you, I respect you. I'm not one of you. Please be kind. But also, what was your media experience of the World Cup? How did you get news and updates about it? Did you notice any of the good or bad stories like I did? Did you find yourself going on an emotional journey about the World Cup as I did? And if so, tell me about it. I like chatting with you. Thank you, my doves. More videos coming soon. Stand by.